All right, unless Irene has another question, we'll go to 10G, which is receive report on meetings of the Oversight Board to the successor agency of the San Bruno Redevelopment Agency.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you may be surprised that I'm starting a presentation, but I'm only going to bore you for 1 or 2 minutes before Kim Duran and Connie Jackson, our finance director and city manager, jump in. We decided that it might be useful for you to see why everyone's having so much trouble figuring out what's going on with RDA dissolution. So we made a little chart for you, and we're just going to take a second and take you through it. The bottom line is you've got local agencies, county agencies, and state agencies all interacting in quite complicated ways, defined by state laws that are uncertain and subject to interpretation. So just for background, if you start at the bottom of the chart on the left-hand side, we had a former redevelopment agency that came up with what was called an EOPS, an enforceable obligation payment schedule. That's what the RDA owed at the time. It also came up with a draft recognized obligation payment schedule, which is what it anticipated it was going to owe in the future and for twice a year. Once the RDA was dissolved, it became, its duties were taken over by the successor agency. That's the next yellow block going up. And as you can see, the successor agency has a number of duties, including developing the ROPS, which has been done, and also staffing the Oversight Board, which is the third rectangle, yet again going up toward the top. So we have an Oversight Board composed of a number of people, you'll hear about that later in Kim's presentation, that is supposed to review and approve the ROPS. But wait, let's stop and look over to the right. We have the county auditor controller who's actually looked at those ROPS as well, both for the successor agency and for the Oversight Board, and is of course making recommendations up to the ultimate authority, the Department of Finance at the state. And they're the ones that ultimately say yes, no, or maybe, usually just yes or no, to what the successor agency and Oversight Board are doing. We're not done. We still have the State Controller's Office up at the top right-hand corner that oversees the county auditor controller to make sure that they're doing a proper job as well. So this is just a brief overview that shows you what the difficulties and complexities are of the system that we're working in. So if you hear staff telling you, both in the past and going on into the future, that we're not sure how to deal with these situations, it's truly because of the Byzantine structure that we've been confronted with. So with that, we may or may not want to leave that up, but I know Kim has some comments to make on the staff report.
Thank you, Mark. So as you may recall, the Oversight Board consists of 7 members that are appointed that represent the largest taxing entities in San Bruno. So there's 2 appointments to the Oversight Board made by the City of San Bruno, 2 appointments made by the County Board of Supervisors, an appointment from the largest special taxing entity, which in our case is the Peninsula Healthcare District, an appointment by the Community College District, and finally an appointment representing the school district. The Oversight Board, along with the successor agency, is tasked with winding down the activities of the former redevelopment agency. Here in San Bruno, that's primarily revolves around 2 tasks. One is the first being the approval of the recognized obligation payment schedule every 6 months, and the second being the oversight and directing the successor agency to dispose of assets and properties of the former redevelopment agency. To date, 3 meetings of the Oversight Board have occurred. The primary focus of these 3 meetings has been to approve the first ROPS for the period of January through June 2012 by the April 15th deadline. In preparation of the Oversight Board's review of the ROPS, staff put together extensive information on each item that appeared on the ROPS for background for the Oversight Board, and a pretty thorough discussion occurred during those Oversight Board meetings of each of those items, with the Oversight Board ultimately approving the ROPS at its meeting on April 13th. Some of the significant actions related to the approval of the ROPS are the Oversight Board did authorize a repayment in the amount of $500,000 for the city advances to the redevelopment agency. There's a total amount of $2.9 million currently outstanding. So as part of their approval, they did authorize a repayment in June of $500,000. They established an interest rate on the outstanding advances at a rate equal to basically what the city is getting on its pooled investments right now, plus 1%. So that equates to about 1.4%, where previously the city was collecting interest at a rate of about 5.8%. The Oversight Board also determined that the zoning code, which was a obligation of the redevelopment agency previously, they did not feel that that met the definition of an enforceable obligation of the agency going forward, and therefore voted to remove that item from the ROPS that was presented to them. And finally, the Oversight Board did take action to approve an administrative budget for the successor agency, which will enable us to receive the $250,000 administrative allowance. Separate from that is a separate decision was the Oversight Board actually retained its own independent legal counsel to advise them on matters, and they determined during their meeting that that legal counsel would be funded separate from that $250,000 administrative allowance. So that was included as a separate line item to be funded separate from that allowance on the ROPS that they approved. So I say all that with a caveat, as Mark pointed out earlier, that while the Oversight Board has approved our first ROPS, it is now in the hands of the Department of Finance. It is up to their review and the ultimate approval of all those items. I can tell you that the Department of Finance is reviewing our ROPS currently. I have been in contact with them this week providing additional documentation, and we do anticipate receiving a letter from them by the end of this week that would indicate any items that they may be sending back to the Oversight Board for reconsideration. The agenda for the next meeting of the Oversight Board will include the second ROPS for the time frame of July through December 31st. The deadline for approval of that ROPS is on May 11th, so that's one of the main items on the agenda. And also a successor agency presentation of the two properties owned by the former redevelopment agency, so the police station and the public parcel at 470 San Mateo Avenue. And that presentation will highlight the public purpose of both of those properties. So that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions or comments.
Any questions of staff?
Just very quick, and I appreciate the updates, and Mark, it wasn't boring. You said on the agency board there is the, quote, school district. Which school district and how was that district chosen?
So the member of the school district represents the high school district. The code, it's a appointment by the superintendent of the school district, and so the appointment is in fact of the high school district in this case.
Okay, so why not another district? Why not the San Bruno Park School District? Why not? How is that high school? Because obviously there's the district.
Honestly, I'm not clear on why the high school district was chosen to be the representative in our case. We could further investigate that.
It was just a question that was asked, so I was hoping to clear that up.
That was not determined by the successor agency, and I can only, we will get you the clear and complete answer. I can only give a window of insight in that the Peninsula Healthcare District is the special district representative taxing entity that sits on our board. They sit on one other board in San Mateo County. They are there because they are the special district that receives the largest amount of property tax of special districts that are receive property tax within San Bruno. They get the most. So I would speculate that potentially the decision about the school district relates to the amount of property tax that is generated either to the elementary district in our case or the high school district.
Thank you.
But we'll get you that answer.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Through the chair.
Irene.
I don't have a question. I just want to commend staff for the tremendous amount of work they've done. This is not easy, and it's new territory, and there's mounds and mounds of paper to go through, and I know Kim has worked extremely hard, along with the rest of the staff, to get all this done, in addition to facing all the Glenview neighborhood stuff, in addition to facing the next budget session. So I thank you. It's not easy, but we do recognize all the hard work you're doing.
Agreed. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, then through the chair, I had asked, I think I emailed city manager, and I said, is 250,000 really enough adequately when we're talking about legal fees and over staff time? Because if I started to just ask the finance director, how much of your time, percent-wise maybe, since we've started this, has this taken? City clerks, city attorneys, city managers, other department heads and staff. I really questioned. Now, I was assured, no, Rico, this going around to 250 should take care of it, but going forward, it may not. And I think that's something of a concern, and granted, we don't have true control over what gets allocated to us anymore, but that's a concern of mine.
To that point, if I might, and that is a concern going forward, we do anticipate that the workload will diminish over a period of time because the continuing workload of the Oversight Board into beyond this period of time and into the next years of the Oversight Board's operation, which is only until 2016, that it will be solely focused on the every 6 months certification of the ROPS. And once we get it down, it's not going to change, so it should be a fairly routine activity. That said, one of the things that we have learned is that the Oversight Board, as Finance Director Duran indicated, we have retained outside legal counsel. They believe and have determined that the $250,000 should not pay for that, but that's still up to the State Department of Finance to confirm, and they may or may not. Indication is at this point that they may not. So $250,000 since February 1st to June 30th probably covers even an extremely intense and time-consuming workload. I won't repeat that, but it has been well beyond what any of us would have anticipated. $250,000 for an entire year, probably not much if the workload were to continue at anywhere near the amount that it has been over the last month and a half.
Thank you. It's been exhaustive, I know.